The past few weeks have been crazy for politics. 2 days ago, we celebrated the inauguration of President and Vice President Biden and Harris. But 2 weeks before that, we witnessed an attack on our nation's capital. And while we spend our time quarreling with the implications of those events, we often forget that our children are also trying to wrap their heads around what's going on and getting a little context. So how do we talk to our kids about politics? How do we bring up these things? Do we ignore it? Do we educate them? Do we have discussions?
I don't want to give them too much. Yeah, I don't want to overwhelm them.
Well, here to talk to us about the ways we can approach heavy political topics with our kids is child psychiatrist Dr. Lea Lis. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
So, let's talk about politics with our kids.
I love it. Is it a smart idea to talk to our kids about politics?
Well, yes, because our children are watching us all the time, and this Capitol breach has us gripped to our TVs and smartphones, and so they see us, and they see our emotional storm, and because of a psychological phenomenon called reward prediction error, we just never know when the next news cycle is going to come in.
Yeah.
So it's a variable schedule. So we are all totally addicted. And so they're watching us and they're seeing our looks on our faces. And so it's really, really important for us to give them context.
So when something happens like the Capitol breach, how do we either bring it up or start that discussion? How much detail do we know of, what we should give?
I think it comes down to really trying to make this a learning lesson and passing down values. So, what happened in the Capitol was very upsetting because it was a threat to our democracy. And, it's really important to explain to children how a democracy works, how there's a voting system, how there are two parties, and when one wins, there has to be a peaceful transition of power. Otherwise, it becomes a dictatorship, which is really dangerous for everyone. And so when the Capitol was breached, it was a threat to that peaceful transition of power, which makes us all feel scared. But as scary as it was, the police got a hold of it and they figured it out, and they, now the Capitol is safe again. And so you can talk about the values of democracy and how we all want to ensure the safety of, our country, and how we really are in a safe country because of, the people who keep us safe, like the police and the National Guard. So I think that's something to share.
Yeah. Let me try and set this out in my brain the way that I want to say it. So, as we see these things that happen in the news, those things that we can sort of process and find our way through, and then be able to explain to our kids, I think that those may become a little bit more naturally, or certainly we can set a path towards them. When I think of things like 9/11 or these things where we, in fact, ourselves may be really scared, that's a different conversation and a different story. How do we navigate those things when we, in fact, ourselves are very scared or very impacted or unsure or anxious or any of those emotions?
I think it's really important to acknowledge that, instead of just think, oh, it's all fine. You have to say, this is scary. There are times of uncertainty, and, I am a little frightened for, myself, my country, if there's, an attack. It's like, and so life is not always, is not always safe. However, I trust in the people around me to get us safe again. So, and you could also say, these are waves of emotion and they will pass. I might be scared right now, but an hour from now, you'll see I'll feel much better because I'm an adult and I've learned how to cope. And so, it's important to acknowledge it. You don't want to, deny it because they can see it on your face. So they'll know that you're, faking it. It's better just to acknowledge it. And, as far as the current situation, it's you need to talk about good and bad ideas, not good or bad people. Belonging, subscribing, or agreeing to different viewpoints does not make you enemies. Because, this is a really tough time. Also, they can totally relate to, their own, you have to relate to their own life. For example, just like you might disagree with another kid at school, it doesn't mean you should insult them. Instead, talk to them and figure out where they're coming from and why they might feel the way you do. So it's you can use these, politicians and these examples to like relate to their own situation. So you can help them develop values of respect, of listening, so they can be better than the people who have gone before us.
Wouldn't that be great? Earlier, you mentioned trends in the news cycle and how different things can pop up and you don't always know when it's coming. Knowing that and knowing that we want to not necessarily control the information that our kids have, but certainly be able to manage it better, do you suggest having our kids watch the news with us?
Yeah, and you can't have a do what I say, not what I do. Like, you can't be on your phone all day long checking the news cycle and tell your kids to stop playing Roblox. Like, you can't,
Sure.
like, you're not role modeling the correct, thing. So, you can either, the problem with the news cycle is it can be really scary. Like, some of the stuff they talk about is very, very scary and difficult for kids to process. Now, they are taking it in anyway because it's on, and they're not, they're standing there. But if you're going to let them watch the news with you, then, you really have to put it into context for them. And that's those discussions that I, brought up earlier. But I do think it is important as a family to watch. If you do watch the news in front of your kids, then you have to have that discussion about good and bad people and, that, good and bad actions, about values, about putting things into context. So that way they, you want them to be, great citizens, and you want them to be politically savvy when they get older. They are eventually going to vote, right? So you need to give them those tools now to how to think about these things. And, they may share your values 100%. They may feel differently about it, and allow them, especially older adolescents, they might start arguing with you. And that's actually good. The only thing is never let the arguments get personal.
Yeah.
We're talking with Dr. Lea Lis about talking to our children about political events, about the news, about those things that might occur in and around us in the world. I would be curious, what are the stumbling blocks or pitfalls that you see people as they try and navigate this with their kids just doing wrong, or that they could do better?
What I've noticed is that parents will get very emotional and they'll start arguing with each other, and they'll use about politics, and even extended families, like on Thanksgivings, and then they'll start using a lot of you statements, like you don't understand, or you're stupid, and they'll make it about, they'll sort of make it personal, and then the kids feel very conflicted about the fighting. And I think the mistake is that, like, avoid using you statements. You can state your opinion, and that's a good thing, but you can't try to personally attack the other person you're talking to, and make it personal, because then they learn that it's personal, because they're always watching. So that's really a big mistake that people make, and parents might make. Or during Thanksgiving dinner with extended family, I always say, if things get really heated at the dinner table, politics, and you want to talk about it, like, give everyone a ball, and only the people who can talk have to have the ball in their hands. So people learn to listen and not interrupt each other. Model some great conversations.
If we know, sorry, go on.
Sorry. The second thing is to get, when you get very emotional, you really need to learn how to calm yourself down in front of your kids. It's really not a great idea to, get so overly emotional about something, that you scream or cry, or, it is important that you role model that you can get upset and also cope and learn how to, bring that emotional temperature down, because you're trying to do that for your kids. You're trying to tell your kids, like, if they get really angry, you need to learn to calm down. So you need to show them how you do it.
What if we find our children experiencing high levels of fear or anxiety? We realize, ooh, this is really bothering them in a way that may be unhealthy, that's a little bit of a warning sign. What do we do in situations like that?
That's a great question. I think that it's really great to learn some very basic coping skills. I have some in my book, Real Talk, No Shame, Real Talk to your kids about sex, self-confidence, and healthy relationships. But it's basic coping skills, learning some basic breathing techniques one is like very simple. It's called square breathing. You breathe 5 seconds in, hold for 5 seconds, 5 seconds out, hold for 5 seconds. So it's like a square, and just like breathe with your kids. Like teach them how to breathe. It takes, an emotion will change every 7 seconds. So all you have to do is calm your body down, and 7 seconds later, they'll start to feel better.
I appreciate that I think that a lot of children and adults can can use that and keep that in a context. A little bit ago, and you mentioned, and I want to pick this up, is that the idea that when your kids get a little older, the discussions around politics change, in adolescence, as they become young adults. What advice do you have for navigating how a relationship will change between a parent and a child when talking about politics, and how to allow for that change?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really good to debate politics with your kids because you are trying to create global citizens. Mm-hmm. And, I think it's great. You just have to remember to keep your voice down, listen to your child's perspective, and always look for the nugget you agree with and compliment it, because then you can address the nugget you do not agree with, and a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. So, share the good and the bad. This will model great communication skills.
Go ahead.
So I think, debate politics with your teenagers. That's a great thing to do. Just remember, it's not personal. Never make it personal. And if it's the you statements come in, you, watch that language. Change it to I feel, I think.
Are there tactics or go-abouts that change if they're adult children? If we're adults and we're engaging with our parents and we're talking about these kind of things, the news and politics, is there something that shifts in that place?
Well, I think, the problem with adult children is, then it becomes more of a, generational issue. Like, a lot of times the parents have different feelings about things. And I always think, this whole, you can get very woke, and this idea that, I'm right and you're wrong and there's one way to think about things. You just have to remember, you have to respect another person's perspective. And there is always a grain of truth or something you can relate to in their perspective. And they will feel much better if you say, I really hear what you said. Let's say, I hear that you think that, Biden might be too old and his memory, might not be great. I hear that, but I want to, present that. I saw him speak there and, I thought he did a really solid job. So you can always find that nugget of truth and relate to that nugget, because people want to be heard. And the worst thing you can do is be like, I don't agree, or you're wrong, because that makes it immediately personal. And then the whole discussion is going to go, downhill. Right.
People want to be heard. And I feel like that is the common thread to keep in mind, whether you're talking, no matter who you're talking to, and having these kinds of debates. I'd love to spend a little bit of time talking about that a little bit more, about how we really effectively teach our kids the difference between conflict and debate.
Yes, exactly. And conflict is all about making it personal. It's not good or bad ideas. It's good or bad people. You got to keep it away from, the personal. It's not about the person being stupid or not understanding, or it's just about they have a different perspective. And I respect that perspective, even though I don't agree.
Yeah. So much of kind of what we focused here is about the listening, about not making it personal. I would be curious, similar to the breathing, the square breathing, which, by the way, I'm not going to be able to forget, as I've been sort of off mic breathing in for 5 seconds and holding it and all these things. Are there simple tactics that you teach kids for listening?
Yes. Something called reflective listening is so genius for little kids, and also people who maybe have social skills issues, they're not as socially savvy as other children. And it's called reflective listening. It's very simple, and you can do it with your own kids, which means whatever someone says, you repeat it back in your own words to make sure you heard them. So if somebody says, I hate school, my teacher is so mean to me, right? Instead of being like, oh, maybe you're thinking about the wrong way, you say, I hear you say that you hate school. I am wondering if there are any good parts of school. So you can just, whatever it is that they say, you just reflect, I hear you say blank. It's a very easy communication skill. It actually works for everyone. And if you just do that all the time with whoever you meet, they'll feel like you really heard them. Hey, how are you? Oh, my uncle's sick. Oh, I heard you say your uncle's sick. How is he doing? See? Very simple. And it works amazingly well. People really respond.
Wow. Why do they call you the Shameless Psychiatrist?
That's a good question. Because I decided that I was tired of all the shame that everybody was internalizing around, everything from who they are as a person, their developing sexuality, their body image, and even like shaming each other politically. And I decided to become the shameless psychiatrist, kind of a play on words, because I'm all about parenting and living without shame.
I love it. Dr. Lea Lis, author of the book No Shame. That's real talk with your kids about sex, self-confidence, and healthy relationships. You can learn more about her and her work on her website, which is drlealis.com. I'll spell it Dr. like D-R, Lea, L-E-A, L-I-S.com.